Good evening, everyone. Happy 2021. Happy Black History Month. Welcome back to Conversation Starters, Black Doctoral Network episode. We are going to be talking about a wonderful topic this evening, and I'm thrilled you all could join us. It's entitled Diversity and Inclusion in Higher Education. I want to go ahead and jump right in. We have some expert panelists that will be joining us this evening to share their insight into this topic and how it affects the academic setting. The first panelist joining us this evening is Dr. Lorenzo Boyd, who currently is the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at the University of New Haven. With his 14 years of experience as Deputy Sheriff in Boston, it has informed his 20 years in the higher education system, where he focuses on professional development training with a central focus on building levels of empathy, lived experience, and cultural competence among police personnel and community members. I welcome you, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you very much.
Our second panelist joining us this evening is Dr. Vikki T Sapp, who currently is the Director of Student Engagement, Diversity and Inclusion, and Assistant Professor at the Department of Medical Education at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine, also the Senior Consultant at Deal With It Management, LLC. With her 20 years in higher education experience, she is focused on first-generation students of color, college access, retention, success, social justice and diversity, equity and inclusion, and a plethora of healthcare topics. I welcome you, Dr. Sapp.
Good evening and happy Black History Month. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Our next panelist joining us this evening is Dr. Terrence Mitchell, who is a Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Edinburgh University, also the Special Assistant to the President for Diversity and Inclusion at Slippery Rock University. With 30 years in higher education, he's focused on a variety of areas with regard to diversity affairs, student activities, leadership programs, scholarship allotment, academic discipline, grant management, and campus security. I welcome you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Next panelist joining us this evening is Dr. Devin Horton, who is currently the Graduate Diversity Officer for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics at UC Davis. With her 10 years of experience in teaching and program development, she provides leadership to deans, faculty, academic programs, academic senate committee, and administrative units to develop and implement recruitment and retention strategies to eliminate barriers for graduate students and postdoc scholars from marginalized populations. I welcome you, Dr. Horton.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and happy Black History Month.
Thank you. And finally, we have joining us Dr. Ashley Campbell, who currently is the Manager of User Security and Data Integrity within the Office of Human Resources at the University of Rochester. With her 10 years of experience in progressive higher education and for-profit, her areas of focus include ethnic psychology, speculative fiction, and television media. I welcome you, Dr. Campbell.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm thrilled and excited to be discussing this topic because I believe it's something that we often overlook, or it just becomes a norm. And there's so many areas that we definitely need to explore. So I want to go ahead and jump right into some of these questions that I have for you all. The first question that I have is, how would you describe the relationship between diversity, inclusion, and higher education? Dr. Sapp.
You know, when I hear that question, I think of the first thing that came to mind for me is a marriage, right? And when we talk about diversity, inclusion, and higher education, I think that some of us at our institutions is a perfect marriage. We're all in the honeymoon stage. We're still doing things. We're recruiting. We're creating access. We're making sure that our students feel included in our programmatic initiatives and student engagement, as well as in the academic arena. And then some institutions are estranged. They recruit and they have nothing on campus for the students. Some institutions are separated. They're not looking at policies, procedures, and practices. I call it my 5 Ps: the policy, procedure, practices, protocol, and I always forget one, and process. And really being able to look at all of that to make sure that diversity and inclusion is there, individuals are at the table. And so when we look at these different institutions, we're looking at a marriage, either it's a perfect marriage, an estranged marriage, separation, or they're just divorced and they're not even on the radar of understanding diversity, inclusion, and how the relationship should be in higher education.
No, thank you for your thoughts. And I like the 5 Ps. We definitely need to hear you say that again for our audience members. Dr. Boyd, what are your thoughts?
I think the relationship is a tumultuous relationship at best, because a lot of institutions say that they want diversity and they preach levels of inclusion, but a lot of them don't know what it is, because many of the people in higher ed are used to the people like them. So when faculty members are recruiting, they recruit their friends. When administrators are looking for other people, they look for people that they know. So there's still a lot of good old boy network happening. So on occasion, they will bring in a bunch of people of color and decide that we can handle the recruitment part, and they do really well with recruitment. But when people get there, there's no affinity groups, there's no mentoring, there's nothing to keep people there, which is why we see so many PhDs of color moving around from institution to institution. So although they say they want diversity and inclusion, and many of them may believe it, unfortunately, a lot of folks don't know how to achieve it.
Thank you. And that just highlights the implementation process. So thank you for that. Dr. Campbell, what are your thoughts?
I'm in agreement with my colleagues who've already spoken. But one of the biggest things that I've come to terms with is, there's an out of order, or as we say in an African spirituality tradition, we're out of ma'at, right? So you have individuals like us who are melanated, Black and brown, who see the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we automatically have certain definitions and understandings as to what that means and what we're looking for. However, mainstream culture has a very different understanding of that, right? So diversity for them in most cases is a numerical value, right? So what are our numbers, right? And that's all that the focus is on. When we get to inclusion, then it's like, well, visually, we're doing what we got to do, right? So the academic spaces actually look diverse. But then once we get to that equity piece, it's kind of like, I'm not sure what that actually means. Oh, I think we're supposed to do this or that because the Department of Labor requires us to report out on certain things. So I guess we're kind of hitting the mark when it comes to DE&I. So for me, when I think about this question, it's more so about we have to first recognize how we are interpreting what that relationship is, and understanding that mainstream culture has a very different way of how they understand what DE&I is and how it actually manifests in the higher education space.
Thank you. Thank you for breaking it down like that. Dr. Horton, what are your thoughts?
Sure. So, of course, I echo my colleagues' thoughts on this. I want to add to that when I think about the relationship between DEI and institutions of higher education, it often feels like an add-on, where the approach is to add on these ideas about diversity, equity, and inclusion, often with the majority of the attention being paid to diversity. To my most recent, Dr. Campbell's point, that it's much more about the numbers as opposed to equitable access and inclusive engagement, right? And I think that oftentimes when institutions think of DEI or the D as an add-on, they don't realize that unless you weave diversity, equity, and inclusion into the very fabric of your institutions, the changes that you attempt to implement are going to be temporary at best, and appear disingenuous to those populations who you claim to serve at worst. So, my 2 cents.
What are your thoughts? Dr. Mitchell. I think you're muted.
I just said I'm the oldest person in the group, so I don't know how to do the mute. So I love what everybody had to say, and so I really like that marriage thing. I'm going to use it. I'm going to claim it, but I'm going to say I got it from somebody else, from Dr. Sapp. So like a marriage, to me, diversity is like you got to be in it for the long haul, And every once in a while, you got to stop and renew your vows, And that's something that's hard for presidents to understand. I was talking to one of our presidents today, and I said, look, so we're going to do this huge plan. It's going to go really well, and then 3 years from now, we got to do it again. And he was like, no. I said, yeah. I said, and then 3 years from then, we got to do it again. So that's one piece of it. The other piece I really connected with was ask us so you can do better. Instead of, Dr. Campbell, I was thinking about, I don't often get asked what I know or what work needs to be done. I get told what tasks need to happen. And diversity, equity, inclusion is not about tasks. It's about thoughtful and intentional work that's going to impact the campus, impact your campus. The other thing I think about, because all of you taught me something just then, we're constantly learning from each other. That's the one thing that we have in common, those of us who do diverse work. We're always learning from each other. And if everybody else learned from us, we make some real progress. And in Pennsylvania, diversity to me is the task. Inclusion and equity is the actual work. So I'm not as concerned about the numbers on the campuses. I work on rural campuses. We're not going to have big numbers, but that work that we do with those young people, that work that we do with those faculty and staff, that's the important work. That's diversity, equity, inclusion work to me.
It's so interesting because what it brought up for me just listening to you, because I'm in Pennsylvania as well, is really thinking about there's going to be a number of spaces where we're not going to have the numbers. So does that mean we don't do diversity and inclusion work on those campuses? Absolutely not. We need to do that work because these individuals who are securing these degrees are going to be going out into the public and they're going to be hiring individuals. And if we don't teach these individuals how to navigate and understand that it's not only about the numbers or how many diverse students you have on your campus. Every institution needs to know how to infuse diversity and inclusion, even with the coursework, and understanding that that's important to educate. Where else are they going to learn this information if they're not doing it in K-12? So if they can get to college and they begin to start working in industries and they begin to start looking at how can they make their industries, their companies, their business more diverse, they need to be educated on that. I'm sorry, I know we're doing questions, but I want this to be a dialogue as well. And I am learning nuggets from you all as well. I love diversity as a task. The work is actually doing inclusion and a sense of belonging. Really doing that work is very important.
No, thank you, Dr. Sapp. And this is what it's about, sharing ideas and thoughts and informing our audience members, because a lot of times they might not really understand exactly what diversity is and may see it in plain form, but may not understand what it is in action. So this is why we're doing this, and I really appreciate the conversation. So the next question that I have for you all is, what are some benefits and challenges in the promotion of diversity and inclusion in academia? I want to start with Dr. Campbell.
Well, for me, I see, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I see more of the challenges than I do see the benefits. I do think institutions are doing a great job in terms of really trying to implement strategic plans, really trying to be more methodical with their programming. But one of the biggest challenges I still come into contact with is, at the end of the day, and I believe even Dr. Horton had alluded to this, what is your framework? How are you actually building the overarching idea of what DEI is going to be for your institution? And are you going to, as Dr. Mitchell said, are we going to renew these vows every so often and be committed to the marathon, not necessarily the sprint? So that's the issue I'm having, just in not necessarily being a Debbie Downer, with understanding that there are challenges and benefits in the promotion of DEI in academia, but really recognizing that we've made some footsteps, but we still got a whole lot more work to do.
Yes. No, thank you so much.
I'm coming in again, and not only the framework, right? but really the accountability and responsibility, right? Beginning to look at these job descriptions and putting it in people's performance program, beginning to have it weigh something and count for something, and people being called out and held accountable for doing the work, if they're not doing the work, why they're not doing the work, and also responsibility, not just giving it or putting it on the shoulders of the people of color, but everyone could carry this weight, right? Everyone, it's enough work for everyone. Let me tell you, there's enough work for everyone. And it shouldn't just be on the person of color, that this one person that you get in. I forgot who talked about mentorship programs and making sure that, you know, when we look at promotion and tenure and who's being promoted, who's being tenured, that's also important, but also having mentorship to be able to give people and show them how to do it, especially when we begin to talk about first generation college students. They're graduating and they're entering the academia for the first time and not knowing how to navigate because they're the first ones who have done it. Or do we have wraparound services support, not only for the faculty and staff of color, but also the students? Right. And so really looking at that and using some of those pipeline programs that we have for the students, using that for the faculty and staff, so we don't always have to renew our vows. We don't have to forget what we have done. It's as if after 4 years, we starting again, just like the students come in for 4 years and they leave, maybe even 6 years, but they leave. Faculty rotation as well. And I'm gonna try to shut up. But this is good. This is good. But accountability and responsibility is so important. We do these frameworks and a strategic plan, and then it sit on somebody's shelf because they didn't put no money to it. They didn't tell you you were responsible for it. We're going to check back with you to make sure you did it. If you didn't do it, what's the accountability there? I'm on fire.
No, Dr. Sapp, by all means, thank you for your insight. You want to go ahead and answer the question? You started, so you can go ahead and provide some more insight. This is very good information.
Some of the challenges are people are not being held accountable, right? And responsible for these strategic plans and frameworks. The benefit is we can write them, we can hire a consultant to get it done, but are we looking at it? Are we carrying it through? Are we putting money behind it? Are we saying you're responsible, tag, you're it, and it's not just the Black and brown people that's being tagged in, right? That everyone is responsible for diversity and inclusion because we can all have enough of this, right? So that's my response with everything else I said.
I'm gonna just add into here. I know it's difficult because we all try to share the mic, so to speak. But you know, Dr. Sapp is also my sorority sister, so we can't necessarily let that slide throughout this entire program. But in addition to that, I do have to lean into one of the things that she did say, but I'm gonna hold it and let other people say their piece, and then I'm gonna come back with a key element that she hit on.
Okay, no problem. Dr. Boyd.
I think we can make a business case for diversity at our universities because the more we can introduce our students to a divergent mindset, it increases level of diversity, it increases the amount of critical thinking skills, but also we need diversity in faculty and staff because our students need mentors. And many of us, I like to call us Black academics, many of the Black academics need to be there so that the young people can see the direction that they need to go in. They need to understand that this is somewhere that I can go, something that I can do. But one of the challenges is that a lot of people who are in favor of diversity, they don't know what it means. They don't know what it looks like. And they'll say, I don't say anything because I don't want to say the wrong thing. So then they stay silent. So we have to help them and walk them along and help them understand what's going on. But also we have to understand those of us that deal with major gift donors, many of our major gift donors tend to be pretty conservative and may not be yet on board with levels of diversity. And then those that have criminal justice programs or business schools or fire science schools tend to have more conservative students that may not be bought into the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So then we leave off that last part, the belonging. We have to build a level of belonging on campus, and that in and of itself is hard.
No, thank you for your thoughts, Dr. Boyd. Dr. Horton.
Yes, I was just looking at my notes. Of course, I echoed, we all know the challenges. And I am usually the Debbie Downer, but I'm going to do better today because my institution, for what it's worth, has actually been doing a really good job. So I think one of the benefits of promoting DEI is the reimagining how we view institutions of higher education, particularly those public institutions. They don't belong to me, they belong to the people. And as such, they should reflect what the people look like. And I think by promoting equity and inclusion, you bring more people into the fold, you bring more people to the table, and then there's a recalibrating our commitment to these institutions because they aren't ours. They don't belong to the faculty, they don't belong to the chancellors, they don't belong to the Republicans or the Democrats, they belong to the people who fund them. And so I think it's very empowering to promote it so that people understand they own it, just like we own the government, and these institutions should reflect the values of everyone in our community. The challenges are what they are. I could go on and on and on, but we all know that's why we're here having this conversation. My colleagues have articulated it very well. So I will end on the positive note because I rarely do. So there you go.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. Dr. Mitchell.
So I come from a student affairs background, so I tend to lean positive. But that's what they paid me to do when I got into the field early, and it distracts people. So I'm gonna talk about the benefit for me. This is wondrous, joyful work. You know, I love this work. You know, it's the work I was built for. It's the work I was trained for when I was very young. I used to do the Black Peer Counseling Center when I was young, wild, and Greek, and I did a good job then. I'm not young or wild anymore, but I'm still a little Greek. You know, but it's work that feeds my soul. You know, I had a small task yesterday where I just got the Kappas back on our campus. We're gonna have 2. We balling because we have no Kappas. You know. Now, I'm an alpha, but still, I want Kappas and Sigmas, Iotas, the AKAs, Deltas, I'm a row. And if I missed anybody, I want you too. You know, I want everybody. You know? I want the students to have the experiences that I remember from my youth. And so it's joyous work for me. And I'm deeply immersed in the literature, deeply immersed in the theory, but that's what drives me is making sure that they have that experience. And we all know that we change lives and we don't have to question it. We change lives and we also shift culture. So that's the benefit of doing this work. That's why I'm still in it. I've been in it for 30 years. I've drifted off into other fields, but I've come back to this work. My biggest challenge is it's hard work and I'm tired. You know, I'm tired and I'm tired every day. You know, I have weeks where I can't sleep because of the decisions we have made or because of the callous things that people say around issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm tired. I try not to be mad all the time, but I had a mad day today. I'm so happy to be with y'all. I needed this. You know, I had a really mad day today because people on both sides of the fence, those people of color and stakeholders not from marginalized communities, sometimes be quiet. Be quiet. Let's move forward. Let's get some work done. Mm-hmm. Sometimes on the other end of the fence, those people who don't get it, sometimes I'm a little bit more patient with them. They don't get it. So I'm not worried about them. No, it's those of us who are stakeholders that are really important. I think that one thing that's a challenge for those of us, those stakeholders that we have, those people we're trying to inspire, they get distracted by shenanigans that people put in our way. And that's all it is. It's shenanigans. People have been putting blocks and interfering with the work for years. And we have been successful through all that, you know? So that's all they are. We had a 4-year shenanigan. I didn't know we were gonna make it, but we made it, you know? So we're gonna continue to do well with this work. So for me, the biggest challenge isn't the way institutions are. The biggest challenge sometimes is us keeping our motivation and keeping our eyes and keeping our focus. We're gonna get this done. And I don't care what you say. You said no today, well then tomorrow you're gonna have to talk to me again. And the next day and the next day and the next day. We're gonna continue to make progress. But that's me. I like all of you, I have months sometimes where I'm like, why be positive? But I know that people are watching. And for those young people and those faculty and staff who are watching, sometimes I have to be that positive person in that room.
No, thank you, Dr. Mitchell. And thank you everyone for your thoughts with regard to this question. This is why I chose this topic, because I needed it to be discussed so people can really understand what the end goal is to continue making progress. That's what I've gathered from each one of you all's statements. Dr. Campbell, did you want to add your statement, or are you going to?
I'll hold it. I feel like it's going to come back later.
Okay.
I'm going to hold it for now.
Okay, no problem. Oh, well, so let's move on to the next question. What role do you see academic leaders play in the implementation of effective diversity and inclusion practices? Dr. Boyd.
Well, we have a leadership role. First of all, we have to show the people who don't know what to do what they're supposed to be doing. We have to show them big picture. We have to have a vision. We have to have a mission. We have to have a 1, 3, and 5 year plan. And then once we get to it, we've got to redo it all over again. Because the line of demarcation with race and ethnicity changes all the time. Because the work we were doing prior to May 25th, prior to the George Floyd murder, was very different than the work that we're doing now, and with the protests and everything else. So the leaders have to lead. We have to have vision. The old folks will have vision and the young people will have dreams.
Thank you. Dr. Horton, what are your thoughts?
So I think when I think about the role of academics, I think specifically about policy, and you can't really implement significant changes in policies unless you have academic folks on board, unless you have people in academic roles, because for those of you who may not, who are out there who may not be familiar with the organizational structure of institutions of higher education, the academic senate runs the show. And so you can't do this work without having academic folks in place, people who are versed in the literature, people who are versed in the experiences of the students. So you have your student affairs professionals, and then people who just are versed in their own personal experiences and bring that to the forefront of the conversation. I just don't think you can push this forward without that. And so I think the role is vital, it is necessary, and it is, as we would say in STEM, it is both necessary and sufficient for anything to really get done.
No, thank you, Dr. Horton. Dr. Sapp.
You know, I love this question because, and I echo my colleagues, right? When we talk about academic affairs drives the ship, the boat, the scooter, the motorcycle, the little skateboard. You know, when we talk about bridging that gap and being able to do both, right? I am in both, right? I have my foot in both. You know, I was in residence life, I was in leadership, I was in Greek affairs, and now I'm in academic affairs and doing all the academic and the curriculum and serving on the faculty council and serving on the Senate and understanding, serving on a promotion and tenure. Our roles as leaders is to get our foot in those doors to be able to have a seat at the table, right? If we're not at the table, we're on the menu, right? We've heard that analogy spoken a lot, right? And bridging that gap. And one of the things that I say as leaders, we have to get folks comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but after May, I say the world is watching. If you can't find your voice and do what you have to do at this point, you're going to miss your opportunity. I love it. The old people have the vision. The young folks have the dreams. And I tell you, our millennials tore it up. They tore the place down. If you have what Mary Frances Winters talks about, sublime ignorance. Well, guess what? You're woke now. You're woke now. They tore this place up and now they are paying attention. And if we don't do what we need to do on our campuses at this point, it's happening generation after generation, right? So this is the time. The world is watching. Stake your claim, right? Don't hold back. Have courage. We are the leaders on this campus. They're coming to us and asking us. Tell them, because I'm not holding nothing back. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I'm telling them everything. I'm singing like a canary. We need to do this and we need to do it now. It's been too long.
No, thank you, Dr. Sapp. Dr. Mitchell.
I knew you were going to make me go after her. Okay. Dr. Sapp, we people. I don't know where we connected before, but in some other life we people. So I think that my approach to this work is through campus leadership. So when I come to a campus, the first people I meet for the first 2 weeks, all I'm trying to meet are the deans, chairs, and the president's cabinet. And amongst the president's cabinet, one of the most important people for me is the provost, because for me, it's not. I don't want to know whether or not the provost is committed. I want to get a sense for what I think that provost is going to do. I might learn about commitment later on, but I want to know right early on what the provost is going to do, because you can't make changes in curriculum, you can't make changes in faculty hiring, you can't make substantive change without the provost being on board. And the academic end of the house is going to follow, in my experience, because everybody's experience is different. And in my experience, the academic end of the college is going to follow the provost. The other people on the cabinet are going to follow the provost, and the president is going to pay attention to the provost. So for me, I like to work with the leadership. I attend faculty senate meetings. I don't care what my role is there. Sometimes I just attend. I'm just in the gallery, because I want to know what they're talking about. I want to know what's important to them. I want to know how to reach them. Right. My newest thing that I'm trying to do in higher ed, I really believe that for us to make progress, I love a diversity plan. But I've been to some campuses where they have each college also making diversity plans, and then each department making diversity plans, and that's the trend for the future. It makes sense to me. The smallest department in student affairs, the physical plant, needs to have a diversity plan. Everybody needs to have a diversity plan, and they need to follow it. And then they need people like us on the campuses to help people by giving them the resources and support. But that direction needs to come from the president and the provost and the rest of the cabinet. So all of it connects. But to me, like I said, you got to get the provost, because if you can't affect change in the classroom, you're not going to be successful in any of the other. So it has to come from that area.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Campbell.
I'm in total agreement, Dr. Mitchell, that you do look to the leadership structure, in particular the provost and the president, the cabinet. In my former role, I sat in a central administration seat. I still do, being a part of the Office of Human Resources. But my role was mostly to be responsible for diversity programming for the entire institution. And what I observed mostly is that a lot of it is driven by whatever those conversations are that the cabinet is having, specifically what the provost is thinking, as you alluded to, as well as some other key players. But one of the pieces that I want to touch on is what it does to us, right? So part of this work really does pull a lot on us, our faces, regardless of where we sit in the matrix of things in higher ed. Oftentimes we become, as Dr. Sapp alluded to earlier, all of the weight is on our shoulders, because we have the visual representation of being that person that's going to be the reminder for any DEI initiative that's actually going on. And so for me, what I always come back to is, well, what about us? How are we actually making sure that we're staying connected to what these DEI efforts are? Are we selling ourselves short? And I'm saying we, the collective we, Black people, when it comes to, are we going to be a part of the actual movement forward, or are we just trying to pacify or appease whatever the language or the rhetoric that's put out there? We actually have to be committed to that work. And what does that mean for us? What's at stake when we decide to actually commit ourselves to DE&I efforts, right? So that is always a big piece for me. And I've seen too many of our leaders who sit in very key positions and they forget. You can actually experience them forgetting, honey, you still Black, honey, you still brown. So you cannot forget that you're not necessarily the exception to whatever is going on, right? You are still a part of mainstream society. There's still all these societal norms that are coming at us. And you have to realize that there's a lot of complexity associated with you serving in that particular position, and how you navigate it. It means a lot, especially when you have other Black and brown people looking at you to make sure, are they still down? Can I still trust them in the process of actually moving DE&I forward? So.
Wonderful.
Can I just chime in to say real quickly that, to Dr. Campbell's point, I think that's also why it's important that people who do this work also maintain community connections. Make sure that you're engaging the community. Go volunteer, get your hands dirty, volunteer, because otherwise it's very easy to live in this ivory tower our salaries didn't stop when COVID hit. We're living a life that many of us couldn't have dreamed of growing up, myself specifically. And as such, it's really important that you actually get out in the community, or at least stay very distinctly connected to people who do the groundwork, so that you always remember that there's a population outside of the people who are privileged enough to be in your institutions. So.
No, thank you. I really appreciate this dialogue, and I hope our audience members seem to be agreeing with a lot of what you all are saying and providing some comments here on our live stream. But this just goes to show that this topic is very important, and a lot of people may be scared to talk about it, and this is why we have these dialogues. So I really appreciate everyone here this evening. So,
and I also wanted to add, and I know it's always me, like she always got to add something, but I'm Black, and that's what we do. This is church at this point. But really, mental health too, and making sure that we take care of our mental health and fill our cup, and how we step away to make sure that we're okay, to be able to come back and go right back in it. Brother Dr. Mitchell said today was not a good day for him. Well, brother, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. And I'm hoping that this is filling your cup to a point where you know that we are in this together. You have my contact information. If you want to contact me, just talk and figure out some strategies, we can do that. But we also have to remember that too, right? Dr. Hoyt, your information about just being here. We didn't lose our paychecks. We're still working, and so many people have. I'm a first generation 3 times over, undergrad, grad, and my doctorate. You know what I mean? And so really understanding that, like Dr. Campbell said, when we're sitting at these tables and we're high up in our towers, not to forget the others, right? But also taking care of ourselves, our mental health and well-being. How do we turn it off so that we can get it back up again, so that we can do what we need to do and do the work for these students? And really understanding those 5 Ps. You asked me to go back to them. I'm gonna do it right now. Get your paper ready, people who listening, whatever you do. Dr. Sapp 5 Ps. I'm talking about policy. I'm talking about procedures. I'm talking about protocols. I'm talking about practices, and I'm talking about process. And so when we get into those and really dig in deep, it takes stuff from us to be able to navigate that, and being able to sit in these rooms and hear how they're moving and how they're navigating spaces, and learning how to do the same thing. I had to learn how to disagree and still feel like I wasn't going to take you to the green. You hear me? I'm from New York City, the Bronx. You said what in the meeting? Oh, I'm gonna meet you outside. And how to not do that and be able to turn that off, to be able to get the resource and the services you need to get for our students and for junior faculty, right? And understanding how to move and then use that as a tool to teach others, to bring others to campus. Like Dr. Boyd was saying, bringing people to campus and having those wraparound services. But you got to fill your cup, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So even understanding that.
No, thank you. And I hope the audience members feeling this energy this evening.
Wait, I'm sorry. She said she's going to take somebody out. That's good. Thank you. My cup is very full. Thank you so much. Keep it up.
Thank you. No, this is a great conversation.
And then realizing that street smarts that you come with, they don't know what to do with me. I play their game. I listen to what they're saying. I'll be like, oh, but wait, when we did it on here. So even having that street smarts and being able to pay attention and being able to use that to be able to change policy. I'm on a search committee for a faculty person, and I'm changing the whole job description, because it's just not right? We're looking for a social justice person, and this person is doing everything. And I'm like, not under my watch. And I had one of my colleagues was like, is it typical for search committees to change the job description? This one is going to be changed, because we're not doing what we used to do. This ain't your old institution. We're not doing the status quo. We can't hire this social justice faculty person and they're doing everything. Wait a minute. We got to take some of this stuff out, because we are setting this person up. And by the time they get here, they're not going to stay. because it's too much that we're asking them to do. What are other faculty doing? And so they don't ask me to be on the committee. Oh, they like, we got to get her off of this committee. But we changed that job description. I tell you that much, because we cannot have people coming in doing all of this because nobody else is doing it. They'll never get promoted.
No, thank you. Again, I hope the audience members is feeling the energy this evening for this wonderful topic. They are definitely agreeing. As you can see, we have a lot of comments coming in. And reaching out to my audience members, please like, share, subscribe with all your friends and family members. This is a wonderful topic to start off Black History Month and really dig deep into diversity and inclusion. So I want to move around to another question that I have here for you all. Do you think that the implementation of diversity and inclusion practices vary by institutional setting? For example, HBCU versus PWI. Dr. Mitchell.
Well, I think that I don't have the experience of the HBCU. I'm fascinated. I started in the work a long time ago. And the idea that we were doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work at the HBCU is refreshing to me and exciting. I think that there's so much potential on those campuses. So people know. And if you want to bring me to your campus, I'll come, because I'll change jobs every couple of years. So I'm really excited about that work. I think that my experience has been in different kind of PWIs, and I'll talk about that. I've worked in liberal arts colleges, what people consider classic, small rural liberal arts colleges that cost a lot of money. And I've worked at state colleges where tuition is like $6,000, and I can tell you there's a huge difference between the work there. And what I've seen so far is at a liberal arts college, sometimes you can get things done quicker. It's a smaller college. There's money there. You can get things done quicker, but sometimes this change doesn't last because administrators especially move through liberal arts colleges. At the larger PWI, sometimes the traditions and the resistance to DEI efforts are so ingrained, and people have worked there for 30 years. Administrators have worked there for 30 years. The idea is even though they're right, they're not fresh and they're not on point. One of the things I've enjoyed so much about these past 10 years of diversity work is that I have peers who are chief diversity officers who are 25, 26, 27, fresh out of their doctoral programs. I love being in rooms with them. I love getting the ideas that they have, having that fresh spirit around things. Some of them tell me, they say, it's kind of creepy that you're hanging out with us because you're so old. I'm like, yeah, but it's just gonna have to be creepy. I need to learn from you. I need to learn from you. I say, if you're wise, you'll learn from me too, because I have some old skills I can bring to the table. But I think that the major difference between the campuses is that we really need to pay attention and tailor our work to that campus rather than taking like a real generic approach. I had a friend who went to work at an HBCU, and she's wonderful. She has a wonderful skill set. But she went to the HBCU trying to do the work she was doing at a PWI. It's different work. It's different people, and the way they appreciate the work and view the work is very different. So just being really cognizant of your environment and tailoring to the campus where you are, I think, is the most important thing you have to do to reflect those differences.
No, thank you. Dr. Horton.
Yes, so this is actually one of my favorite questions. I used to be faculty at an HBCU for 5 years. I'm also a graduate of an HBCU, but I went to a PWI, a giant research institution for graduate school, well, for my PhD, and now the last 2 places I've worked in ginormous PWIs, R1, research one institutions. I think that what happens at predominantly undergraduate institutions that serve minority populations, so Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, HBCUs, they've pretty much got DEI unlocked because there's no choice, right? There's no choice. People of color, oppressed people from marginalized communities don't get the option to not know how to do DEI work properly. We don't get to bring white students into our midst and treat them the way that we are treated when we're brought into their midst. So they're doing it right. What we need to do as PWIs, for those of you who may not know, predominantly white institutions, or R1, right, research intensive institutions that have all the money and all the resources, is we need to stop being incestuous and thinking that we in our little bubbles actually have the answers. And we need to engage the faculty who are at the minority serving institutions and elevate them for their expertise because they already know how to do it. The reason I got the job that I got is because I was faculty at an HBCU, and my former boss was like, I bet she already knows how to do this. And she was right. I have a PhD in cell biology. I have no degree in diversity, anything in sociology and history, but my lived experience is enough. The sociologists out there, what they do is they put data to my lived experience. So I'm able to actually do this work without having to have a degree specializing in this field. So what we really need to do is elevate the expertise of these people because they already are doing it. They're doing it well. They're creating physicians and engineers and teachers and nurses and everybody you can think of. We don't need a bunch of more research. We need to go to the local community college, which is far more diverse than any institution any of the bigger institutions, the research institutions. Go to your tribal colleges, go to your HBCUs, go to your Hispanic studies institutions, gather up those people who have PhDs just like you do and tell them, we need you, we need your help. Can you train us? Can you tell us what you do? And we should be learning from them. And that's just, it is what it is in a nutshell. I am very passionate about that as a person who used to be faculty at an HBCU. And that's all I have to say about that.
That is excellent. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Dr. Campbell.
I'm gonna just say Ashe. I just there's no other words to really add to that response because sister girl got it. So I'm good. I that was part of my response, and I'm gonna just say I've only been at a PWI. And so that's been my lens, my experience. I've had the exposure to Western schools where their philosophy is a little bit different. But for the most part, yeah, you got to engage the people who've been doing this work since day one. So Ashe, that's all I got right there.
Thank you. Dr. Sapp.
Ashe times 2. Next question, baby.
Dr. Boyce.
There's definitely a dichotomy there, having been degreed at R1, but having been tenured in administration at 2 HBCUs, it's very, very different because the perspective is different. When you're at a PWI, you tend to experience what I call the black tax. And there's not that many of us, so we have to answer the questions. And we're always on the Black History Month committee or the MLK committee, and anything to do with students of color, then you have to be the one to do it. It's not like that at HBCUs because there are more people doing more work. There's a time at HBCU to exhale. And admittedly, at least the 2 state HBCUs that I've been to, the resources weren't as good at the PWIs, but the family was a little different. And the way we handled the students, the way we dealt with the students, we spent more quality time, I thought, with students at HBCUs. And then for me, at least, a lot of the young brothers that needed mentoring or didn't have fathers ended up being part of my circle. And you get to spend more time with these young brothers outside of the classroom, outside of school, talking to them a lot and mentoring them through life. It's just part of the role that society assigns you if you're called to an HBCU. And I got to say, being at an HBCU is absolutely a calling, and it's fulfilling. And for those that haven't done it, give it a try. It's work. It's work. Like Dr. Mitchell said, you get tired. It's work, but it's fulfilling work.
Thank you. See, this is a great conversation. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, and I think, again, the audience is definitely chiming in and loving all this insight you all are providing. So the next question that I have is, how does the socio-political environment influence the success of diversity and inclusion strategies in higher education? Dr. Mitchell.
So I'm in Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, I'm part of the PASHE system. And before the election, and I'm going to speak directly to the election, so that way I can free everybody else to be able to speak to that too. Before the election, we got a series of directives about curtailing our diversity work. And the young professionals around me were very disturbed by that, and I wasn't as disturbed. And I didn't know why until after the election, because immediately after the election, we got a series of memos reversing all those things. But the damage it did was now people are feeling like there can be ways to curtail our work, and so I'm having discussions with colleagues who would never have talked to me about, well, what kind of restraints should we put on your work? What kind of assessment should we do for your work? How are you going to prove that your work is valuable? And we've always had to respond to, showing value in our work, but people now are acting like we have to justify our work in new ways. And so those last 4 years were very damaging to our work. And so the socioeconomic environment has hurt us a lot. And then for us with boots on the ground, and diversity officers don't have the luxury of not dealing with all the real problems that our students and our faculty and staff deal with. So, I can try to walk by a student who I know is food insecure, but I can't do that. I can't do that. I have to stop and take a minute. I can't ignore a young mother who doesn't have a way to get to campus. I can't ignore a faculty member who's sitting in her office crying because she's been demeaned in a meeting, or a young man who's been sitting in the office crying. So our work is so impactful, and we have to be so strong through those times. I like that Dr. Sapp told us to do self-care, but I'm the worst. I'm falling apart as we speak, and not emotionally, I'm physically falling apart because the work is taxing on us, So dealing with the socioeconomic environment around us, it makes the work something that we take home with us. It makes the work something that we're always shouldering. It makes us speak up in spaces. I'm like Dr. Sapp. Sometimes I just have to say it and just take the repercussions from it. It makes us put ourselves out there all the time. So personally, it impacts us in that it really, I think, sometimes deters from the large visioning that we get to do, but then also on a micro scale, and on an everyday scale, it impacts us because we have to keep so focused, and we have to. My mother told me when I was young, we have to do 150%. I think diversity officers have to do 230%. I think we have to go above and beyond when we're doing this work. And so I don't want to just focus on our experiences, but I think sometimes our critics sometimes are our own folks. And I don't think they really think about how much we have on our shoulders. I tell people, I said, look at my shoulders. And they say, what? I do this. I say, I'm carrying the whole institution, everything about this predominantly white institution. I'm trying to carry forward. I said, and it's really, really hard. And I don't think people understand how much the external factors impact the internal work that we're trying to do on our campus.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Horton.
So this one is a little bit, I don't have as succinct a soundbite for this one. This is not my favorite question. But I will say that, of course, it has an impact because the best way to, I think, reduce the amount of resources that we put towards this is to politicize it, which means that our ability to do our work swings depending on the political landscape. But I think there's a benefit to that in some ways. It teaches you to weather those storms, and it teaches you to know what to expect. And given how far the pendulum swung the last 4 years, I think it woke up a lot of people, which is evidenced by the voting, the sheer amount of voting. And I think the more civic engagement we have, the better, because to be perfectly honest, when you look at a ballot, the further down the ballot you go, the closer to your actual house you get. And I think more people now have an understanding of the impact of local voting. And so knowing that there's a huge impact is beneficial when you think about what that impact has been when we didn't know, right? And so now that we know, people who probably weren't typically going to engage or care will now spread the gospel, so to speak. And hopefully over time, that will reverberate back and have a positive impact. Again, I'm not a half glass full kind of person. So I promise you, this isn't normally how I operate, but I can't help but be heartened by the number of people who were civically engaged. And so it does swing. I do think, like I said, having those swings teaches us how to weather storms, but the increase in civic engagement, I think, is going to be beneficial because so much of what we do is so sort of inextricably linked to the socio-political climate.
No, thank you. Thank you for your insight with regard to that question. Dr. Campbell.
They're definitely, one of the biggest things that I keep coming back to is the word success, recognizing that again, as I articulated earlier in our discussion, that how we understand what success looks like is definitely different for how mainstream America sees what success looks like. And so for us, the last 4 years definitely put a damper on things, right? It put us in a very awkward and interesting headspace. But I'll just say, from what I observed with what my institution did, the energy was, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep moving. We're going to keep pushing. We're not going to allow all of the outside noise to really dampen the work that we are trying to do. And, you know, I recognized, I actually observed in my leaders that this whole push-pull method, you know, that was happening. And that's definitely during the last 6 months, you know, in 2020, of feeling like, you know, this issue coming up, then this issue coming up, then that issue, and you're trying to keep the train moving, but every time you take one step forward, you feel like you're going like 10 steps back. But what I admired about the leadership was that there was still a willingness to keep pushing forward in the midst of things just kind of being just all over the place. So the social political environment will always impact the success of DEI work at the institution. But I think for us, and I think even what my colleagues have also shared too, is how much do we really want to focus on that? Do we want to just keep all of our energy there, or are we going to keep our mind on the actual work itself and try to keep moving, making some headway forward?
No, thank you, Dr. Campbell. Dr. Sapp.
I love this question. When we look at over the past 4 years, yes, I believe that it has greatly impacted institutions. Now, whether we wanted to pay attention or not, some people went into their shells. Some institutions came out screaming because they didn't want to be, it exposed the ugly underbelly of America that all people of color knew was there. But some of our colleagues who are allies, they had a comfortable space of just staying silent. Well, that's what happened in the 4 years, exposing the ugly underbelly of what we already knew. It allowed some people to amplify their voices. And they was like, I'm not with that one. And they begin to stand up and start speaking and start doing stuff. I mean, at my institution, my colleagues came out in droves. Now, at first they didn't. And I wrote a dear colleagues letter. Yes, I did. I wrote a dear colleagues letter because since I've been at my institution, I did stuff for LGBT, right? Everybody was on board. I did stuff for first generation. Everyone is on board. When it come time for race, I knew they wasn't ready when I got there because it was only 3 Black faculty on campus, right? A Hispanic, 2. So I knew they weren't ready. So I did other stuff. And then you mean to tell me when it came time for my time, I've been there for 3 years doing this work and they've been in it with me. I got 29 people on the first generation committee. I got 14 doing LGBT stuff. We just doing it. And when it came time for this, y'all know where to be found? Oh, yes, I called them out. I wrote a dear colleague letter. The president called me. I just want to talk to you. Okay, what you want to talk about? We did a Zoom. What you want to talk about? And so he's asked me, what are your recommendations for what us to do? I had 17. I'm glad you asked. I said, I wrote a letter. He said, I know. They showed it to me. I said, good. So you know how disappointed I am. He was like, yeah, you know how disappointed I am. So when we talk about voices being amplified, and some of my colleagues is like, okay, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I'm going to have to speak up. I'm going to have to come out and say stuff. My colleagues, they came out in droves saying stuff. I said, great, because I need the dominant culture, Eurocentric culture, y'all gonna have to do the work. I'm tired. Y'all do it. I'm gonna need y'all to do this. I can tell you where to go. I got 17 recommendations, and he adopted them, and he was doing it. Mandatory for everyone. Boy, some folks were mad, but I bet you they were there. They were there. And so really understanding that this 4 years have exposed the underbelly that we already knew was there. We knew it. We were living it. But we had sublime ignorance, like Mary Frances Winter talks about. Sublime ignorance, like everything is okay. Everything is roses. We don't even know stuff is happening. But I guess they know now. And it amplified some voices that would have been sleeping for decades. So that's what I feel. Yes, the social political environment, absolutely, it influenced the diversity strategies in higher education. And if we're not paying attention, we're not going to make those recommendations that we need to make. This is the time to make those recommendations. It's been a long time to make them. And sometimes we have to repeat ourselves because we've already made them. Well, make them again, people. Make them again. They're listening now. It has exposed the underbelly that we already knew was here. Now they know it's here. Now how can I help? They asking for books for their children. I'm giving them everything. Teach your kids, because then they're gonna move into these positions too, and they need to be educated because they're not doing it in K-12. So get all the literature, talk to them about it, have a conversation. Let's start teaching people about the history. Slavery is white history too. So it exposed the underbelly. People are waking up. They're doing stuff. They're shifting stuff. They're trying to be allies to folks of color because they don't want to be on that side. Like, I don't want nothing to do with that. That's not who I am. Well, then you're going to have to take some action. I'm going to put what you say. I want to see it in your action, your attitude, and your behavior. And I've been holding people accountable, and they have not disappointed me yet. There's still microaggressions I'm dealing with. There's still that stuff. It's always going to be that stuff. And I can deal with that. But now that I know who they are, they've come out of the cracks. And they're like, we standing with you. Okay, well, this is your task, and this is your task, and that's your task. And they're like, okay, I'm finished with it. What else I do? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those people. So yes, it has an influence.
Thank you. Dr. Boyd.
You know, socially and politically, it would be nice to think that our universities are in a vacuum. But what happens in the rest of the world ends up on our campuses. We've got students from all over the country and different countries. So every time there's something political that happens, and all politics is local, but all of these local politics come together. And let's acknowledge our students are hurting. There's a lot of Black and brown students that are hurting because of what's going on financially in this country. And then with the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, I can go on and on and on. They're dealing with that. And then they have to deal with the protests because their voices need to be heard, and protests then move into riots and stuff. And all of that is wrapped in a pandemic, and people are not allowed to be where they want to be on campus. And there's a lot of, distance learning. Through all of that, we still expect them to do well academically at the time in their lives when they're just trying to figure out who they are. Many of them are away from home for the first time. They don't know yet how to do a lot of the stuff they need to do. So we're putting a lot on them, and our people in particular, because of their Blackness and the way society in America deals with them, they're hurting. So we need to have community conversations. We need to bring these students together. We need to listen to them. And we need to either literally or figuratively wrap our arms around them and keep them safe to shelter them through this storm. Because the political climate that we went through the last 4 years, no one should have gone through that. And again, remember, a lot of universities are talking about the business case of higher ed, trying to stay in business or trying to make a profit. But we can't afford to do that on the backs of Black and brown kids. We need to protect our young folks, because what's happening in the world, what's happening in our nation, and what's happening in a lot of our local jurisdictions, it's affecting our students, and it's affecting sometimes the ability for them to do well academically. We need to shield them, and we need to protect them.
So I don't want to. So here's the one space where I'm always a wet blanket. I don't know if we're gonna ever fix this. So that's why I think our work is so important. I think we had to hunker down and do this work, because I don't know that we'll ever fix this. I talk on my age because my birthday is coming up, and I'm looking forward to my birthday. But the reality is, this is the worst time of my life. It is one of the worst times of my life. And I've had death in the family. I've had personal illness. I'm talking about as a society where I haven't been out the house since March, really. I've been out a couple of times, but I haven't really been out the house, where I felt free and comfortable to go out the house. Even we bought a home today, and I was really happy about that. I need to get out of that real estate office. I'm in a state where people were walking around without masks and trying to offer me coffee. I was like, you need to get away from me so I can get back to my house. It's a horrible time. And I think about it. I have a 20-year-old daughter in school in New Orleans. I think every day about the things she's risking. So Dr. Boyd, you reconnected me to those concerns I have about the young people is important, because I talk about my concerns, but I'm not anywhere near as concerned as I am for a young person. I worry about young professionals who are in their 30s and 40s, and they just kind of beginning their career. What do they have to look forward to in higher education? We've wrecked this system for them. So those of us who have been in the work for a long time, those of us who are older, we got to make sure that we maintain so we can have something to leave to them. Because I'm really concerned about what we've left to those people behind us and how they're going to make it. I'm really concerned about that. So thank you for getting me off of my bad day and helping me remember there's a whole society that's hurting today.
I just want to add, for the young people, because I will acknowledge that I'm a millennial in this space. One of the challenges that I find that we have to do is we have to lean into our elders. We have to lean into people who have done it before and be able to foster conversation with them where there is a mutual relationship and exchange, so that we can have some real productivity and growth, right? I've experienced being the person who's the youngest one in the room, but being acknowledged as someone who doesn't know what to do, right? Who doesn't have a clue of how this work is supposed to actually happen. And I've experienced it from people who look like me, and of course from mainstream culture as well. But one of the things that I keep holding on to is that I got to find my people. I got to find my community. I got to find the elders who can pour into me and give me some insight about what's happening. So we are there. We are holding on. We trying to make our way in this space of higher education and trying to navigate, well, what is it going to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And I even just me personally, I've observed that we as a people have a hard time actually dreaming, actually being willing to reimagine what the future could look like. And so for us, I believe our role as millennials, as centennials, is to help keep you all alive and well and thriving and all that kind of stuff, give you that energy so that you can keep pouring into us as well. So it's this wraparound thing that's happening in higher ed. And we know that the numbers of us is low, right? There's not a lot of us that even exist, especially when we talk about predominantly white institutions. And so it's even harder for us to try to find our people. But when we find them, we try to hold on as tight as we possibly can, so that we know that, this my people, this my family, and I'm not going to let go, because I believe in the collectiveness of us being able to move forward and not, and not saying where we have been in the past. So I just wanted to add that to what you were sharing.
Thank you. Thank you all for just a elaborate and diverse conversation, and for hitting all the great points. I mean, we have a plethora of comments coming in right now, and it's just thoroughly amazing. So I want to go ahead and close out the show really quickly with a quick response rapid fire question. How has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network helped to enhance you personally and or professionally?
Let me start with that. This is my third year in the Black Doctoral Network. It's a place that I can be me. I can kind of exhale. I can be around other Black academics, and we can talk about the issues that affect us, because I often talk about the masking of Black America, particularly in higher ed, where we have this facade that we walk around with. When I'm in the Black Doctoral Network, it's a place where I can, as a vice president, I can walk in and say, let me explain to you some of the job openings. Let me explain to you some of the things that are going to get you in there. Because ultimately, higher ed, it's like academic hazing. Going through higher ed, I thought was worse than when I pled Sigma. So if I can get young people to understand where we're going and remove some of the barriers and remove some of the hurdles that they have to go through. Because I'm on the other side of that, I can explain to them what the other side is. So part of it is I get to be me and I get to be myself. The other part of it is that I can help people that are coming up where I used to be.
So I guess I'll chime in next. So first of all, the beauty of the Black Doctoral Network is that, we're all trying to engage with people who are listening and watching. And I can say without fail that a Greek Black person is going to find a way to throw their Greek in there. So who's the only non-Greek on the call? I just wanted to bring that up. But you can only say that kind of stuff when you're part of the Black Doctoral Network. I see y'all. For me, I've only been doing work so I used to work on the undergraduate side, but now I'm on the graduate side. And because of the way that my work is positioned, I do have to think about how we diversify faculty in addition to just graduate student population. And so the way that the Black Doctoral Network has been beneficial to me is because it is a repository of really amazing people, right? And it's all nicely packaged and well put together so that I can say, hey, you're looking to hire. We have a membership, an institutional membership. Here is the pool. You can't say the numbers don't exist. So it provides a way. My sole goal in life is to sort of save the world one little Black child at a time, is what I used to say. But part of that is once these people, matriculate out of these fancy institutions and are now looking for positions, like how can I help? How can I support? And BDN has really been beneficial for that. So I appreciate being a part of the organization. I see my role as a bridge between the Black Doctoral Network and the lovely, fantastic postdocs and grad students who are in the group, who are trying to find positions, and this perch on which I sit, which is the University of California, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, public institution of higher education in the country. And so, there you go.
I didn't get opportunity to answer the question about the HBCU and PWI. And, I've worked at 6 different PWIs. I never worked at a HBCU. But when I think of the Black Doctoral Network and my affiliation, my membership, and attending the conferences, what it has done for me is the skills, the knowledge, and the ability that I have obtained from my institutions with all the training that I've received. I've been able to sew that back, right? So meeting people, I've met people at the conferences, and because I serve on the promotion and tenure committee at my institution, I know what they're looking for. And so now I'm helping other people who are trying to get promoted at their institution, because sometimes we stay assistant professors forever. And we could be promoted to associate professor and then to a full professor, right? And understanding the importance of that, having partnerships with writing papers so that I can have my scholarship so I can go up for promotion, having opportunities to present with each other at conferences, right? National conferences, regional conferences, and working with each other. And it has been great with this virtual stuff going on. It has been great to connect with individuals in the Black Doctoral Network and partner with them on stuff so that I can get promoted, they can get promoted. We're helping each other and uplifting each other, right? To be able to do that in different disciplines. We're in different disciplines and we're writing papers together. We're presenting at conferences. We are doing it. And these are individuals that I met at the Black Doctoral Network. If I didn't go there, it's so lovely, all the Black people. I'm like, oh, my people here, my people. And I don't have to pretend. I can just, I'm my authentic self anyway. You can tell right now that I'm just who I am. But even more so, the comfort that I feel when I go there, just connecting with people.
I'm going to try to go next because I get emotional when I talk about the Black Doctoral Network. I have deep, deep love for the Black Doctoral Network. I started my PhD program over a decade ago, and I was in the program for 9.5 years. I had no idea it was going to be a program that long. It had a devastating effect on me. It had a devastating effect on my family. It was a horrible process. And yes, like Dr. Boyd, I'd rather have Alpha Wood than have the doctoral process. I really would. Please beat me, because that was a better experience for me. I started tearing up thinking about answering the question. I remember my very first conference where I walked in the door and I was a brand new PhD student and an old PhD student. And I was welcomed like I was 20 years old. You know, I remember the first time I presented my research and I had been told on my campus that my research wasn't important. I wasn't a good scholar. I wasn't that smart, you know, and I didn't know I needed to be told those things, you know, so I was told all these things to make me humble. When I went to the Black Doctoral Network in my 5th year and in my 9th year, right? You know, because my chair quit right before I defended, you know. So I was at the Black Doctoral Network and they said to me, all of them, especially Miss DeAndre, I'm sorry, DeAndre, I'll mention you every time, especially Miss DeAndre, what is your head doing down? We are so proud of you. We are so proud of you. At lunch, people told me how proud they was. At the recruiting tables, people told me how proud they were of me. I saw other people who needed to be lifted up like that. I tell people if I ever hit the lottery, half of it not half, but a lot goes to the Black Doctoral Network. You know, the work you're doing is so important. And for those of you who are new to the Black Doctoral Network, don't give up on it. Don't give up on it. Follow it all around the country because when we get back face to face, put your coins together and come join us. That's the space for you. Like someone else said on the panel, I didn't go to an HBCU, so I didn't have that experience. But I had a deep fellowship with African American people, with Latino people, with Asian people, with people who were marginalized. And at the Black Doctoral Network, I went in that room and said, okay, well, they get it right. And so I'm always going to be the big supporter. I love you guys like I love my child, you know, and my child is watching. She's going to be like, really? Really? Except for I pay for everything for you. So, all right. Thank you guys for letting me talk.
For me, it's family. And it's been family since day one. I remember my first conference and I said, oh, my Lord, why have I not been already doing this? Like it should have already been a part of my routine. And I used my energy, you know, the energy I felt. And I said, I'm bringing another colleague. And so I never forget attending the conference. And she is a dear sister friend of mine, Dr. Anika Simone Johnson. She and I was like having the time of our lives at the conference, making connections with everybody. And it has been routine. Like it's just been a part of what we do. Our conversations are so much richer because of the connections that we have with the Black Doctoral Network. And one of the biggest pieces that I think is important to really highlight is that the BDN is a net that works, right? So it's not about just giving the lip service to say, oh, we're collaborative. It's a great opportunity to have, you know, a directory of individuals, all of the, you know, the really bougiefied, and I'm just using that word. That's me. I'm gonna own that for right now. The bougiefied way of saying, oh, yes, you can go to this. Honey, it's family. It's just family. We just going, we just be ourselves. We get the love, we get the encouragement that we need, especially when we're going through our doctoral processes. And then also just really taking hold of, you know, the other opportunities that come with that, right? The job opportunities, just the kind of the listening ear for, hey girl, you can submit a paper to this publication because you're going to get, you know, there's going to be some more visibility for the work that you're really interested in. So it's family for me. That's it's just all love.
Everybody there is beautiful. Everybody there is beautiful. I love going to the conference because I love that night we all dress up and just look good, and we look good like we look good. I took my wife the last time and she hadn't been before. And it was in New Jersey. It wasn't the biggest conference, but we look good. We look good. We look good. And everybody's beautiful. Everybody's brilliant. And I learned from everybody there. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to be. There's nothing wrong with the BDN. Nothing wrong with the BDN.
Hello? Can you all hear me? I think we had a connectivity issue on my end, but thank you all for those wonderful things you said about the Black Doctoral Network, because this is why we're here. This is why we do it. And you all are showing the audience members why this organization is what it is, because of individuals like you. And I just want to say thank you 1,000 times plus for all that you do and you continue to do. And this conversation, I mean, this is by far a wonderful start to 2021, a wonderful start to Black History Month. And you all, as African American innovators, scholars, researchers, there cannot be anything less than to say thank you and continue to say thank you in all that you do. So, but nonetheless, this concludes our episode of Diversity and Inclusion in Higher Education. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedules. As you've heard, all the stressors and factors that they have to deal with, to take time out and educate myself as well as the audience in regards to how important diversity and inclusion is in the academic setting. So I just want to say thank you again. So before we go, I want you all just to share a bit of your contact information on how the audience can get in touch with you to reach out and have this conversation on a more elaborate scale. Dr. Mitchell.
Hi, I'm working both at Slippery Rock and Edinboro. You can contact me though mostly through my Edinboro email, tamitchell@edinboro.edu. And I have an Instagram site, CDIO_EdinboroU. And I also have a small nonprofit, creedonline.org. Visit them too. And if you want to, drop a couple of dollars in. Always got to put in plug for Creed.
Thank you. Dr. Sapp.
Hi, you can reach me at my LinkedIn, Dr. Vikki T Sapp. You can also reach me through Deal With It Management, as well as Mentor First Gen. And I believe they're putting that in. I didn't give them the Mentor First Gen, but you can look it up. I know you have the skills to be able to do that. Mentor First Gen. I see Dr. Anika Simone Johnson, my partner, and that is, she just put a comment up. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Dr. Horton.
So I am at UC Davis, and my email should be up there. It's dlhorton@ucdavis.edu. Or I run or created an organization called Black Girl Doctorate. So if you are a woman or a femme-identified non-binary individual who's looking for some community, I encourage you to go to blackgirldoctorate.com, and from there it will take you to the Facebook page. And we would be happy to have you. We're actually having a happy hour, which is really not a happy hour because you know how Black people are. It's basically a party on Zoom tomorrow afternoon. So if you take yourself over there, click the link. It's free. You just come and hang out and decompress.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell.
You can reach me via LinkedIn or any of the social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And pretty soon I'll have a new website called www.ashleynicolephd.com. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Dr. Boyd.
You can find me at the University of New Haven. My email is lboyd@newhaven.edu. I also have a pretty strong social media presence. So if you Google me, you'll find me.
All right. Thank you. Again, thank you, panelists, for this wonderful, enlightening conversation this evening. And to our audience members, if you've enjoyed Conversation Starters and would like to keep up to date with the latest BDN developments, please be sure to check us out on blackphdnetwork.org, become a member, and follow us on Facebook at Black Doctoral Network. I'm your moderator, Fese Longe, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a nice evening.